Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Earthly Delights, where we place our hands in the soil not only to grow better food, but also to understand the quiet wisdom that nature teaches us season after season. I'm truly glad you're here with me today. Imagine this for a moment. It is the middle of July. You step into your garden, the sun feels warm on your face, and your tomato patch looks powerful and full of life. The plants are taller than your shoulders, thick with dark green leaves, spreading in every direction like a healthy summer jungle. But then you gently move the leaves aside, hoping to find a heavy harvest, and you notice something disappointing. There are only a few small green tomatoes tucked deep in the shade. Then you look closer and see brown spots with yellow rings beginning to climb up the lower leaves. You have watered them, fed them, cared for them, and still you find yourself wondering, what went wrong? The answer may feel strange at first, but every experienced gardener eventually learns it. Sometimes, to help a plant give more, we must ask it to carry less. We have to remove what is wasting energy, blocking light, and trapping disease. A tomato plant left completely alone may become a beautiful green bush, but that does not always mean it will give you the best harvest. Too often, it produces more leaves than fruit, and the tomatoes it does make are hidden where sunlight and airflow cannot reach. Today, we are going to talk about how to prune tomatoes for maximum yield and stronger plant health. We will look at how the plant grows, how disease starts from the soil, how energy moves through the stems and leaves, and how the right cuts can guide a tomato plant toward better fruit. And along the way, we may also learn something about our own lives. Sometimes, cutting away the excess is what allows the best things to grow. Let's begin. 1. The genetic blueprint. Who are we nurturing? Before we make even one cut, we need to stop and ask a very important question. What kind of tomato plant are we caring for? Pruning tomatoes is not something we do the same way for every plant. In the tomato garden, there are two main groups, and their natural growth habit decides how much pruning they need. The first group is determinate tomatoes. These are the more compact, goal-focused plants of the garden. Their growth is genetically programmed to stop at a certain point, often around 4 or 5 feet tall. They grow, set a strong flush of flowers, produce their fruit in a short window of about 3 to 5 weeks, and then their main job is finished. Because their harvest is already built into that limited growth cycle, heavy pruning can be a costly mistake. If you remove too many branches from a determinate tomato, you may be removing future flower clusters and future fruit. For bush-type tomatoes such as Roma or Celebrity, the best approach is restraint. We only remove the lowest leaves that are touching the soil or sitting too close to the ground. Then we have indeterminate tomatoes. These are the long-season growers, the ones that keep reaching, stretching, and producing new leaves and flowers until frost finally ends the season. Varieties like Cherokee Purple, Better Boy, and many heirlooms belong to this group. If an indeterminate tomato is left completely alone, it can quickly become a tangled mass of stems and leaves. It may look impressive, but much of its energy goes into making foliage instead of ripening quality fruit. This is where good pruning makes a real difference. When we understand the nature of the plant, we can guide its growth instead of fighting it, and in many ways that is true for us as well. When our energy spreads in too many directions, sometimes a little thoughtful pruning helps us become more productive and more focused. 2. The ground floor. Battling unseen enemies. Now let's look at the base of the plant, right where the stem rises out of the soil. The soil is full of life, nutrients, and unseen activity, but it can also hold problems that move upward when conditions are right. One of the first and most useful pruning steps is to remove the lower 6 to 12 inches of leaves from the main stem. The reason is simple: splashing water. Many common tomato leaf diseases, including early blight and septoria leaf spot, are caused by pathogens that can survive in soil and old plant debris. When rain hits the ground or when water splashes during overhead watering, those spores can bounce up onto the lower leaves. Once they land there, disease can begin to spread slowly upward through the plant, yellowing leaves, creating spots, weakening growth, and reducing the plant's ability to feed its fruit. By removing those low leaves, we create a clean space between the soil and the canopy. That simple gap can reduce the chance of disease moving from the ground onto the plant. It also improves airflow around the base. When air can move freely, morning dew dries faster, humidity drops, and fungal problems have a harder time getting established. This is one of the most practical habits you can build as a tomato grower. Clear the bottom, protect the foundation, and give the plant room to breathe. A strong harvest often starts with a clean, healthy base. 3. The sucker dilemma. Directing our energy now, we move up the stem to the pruning topic most gardeners hear about first: tomato suckers. A sucker is the small shoot that grows in the joint between the main vertical stem and a side branch. If you look closely at that little armpit of the plant, you will often see a new shoot growing at an angle. That is the sucker. On an indeterminate tomato, every sucker has the potential to become another large stem. It can grow leaves, flowers, and fruit of its own. At first, that sounds like a good thing. More stems should mean more tomatoes, right? But in the garden, more growth does not always mean a better harvest. A tomato plant has a limited amount of energy. The fruit clusters, the growing tips, the leaves, and the new stems are all asking for food and water at the same time. If every sucker is allowed to grow, the plant may become crowded and heavy with foliage. Airflow becomes poor, sunlight cannot reach the inner parts of the plant, ripening slows down, and the fruit often ends up smaller. So we have to decide what kind of harvest we want. Do we want a wild mass of growth with many small fruits hidden inside? Or do we want a cleaner, more controlled plant that gives us larger, better quality tomatoes over the season? Many experienced gardeners train indeterminate tomatoes to one or two main leaders. That means we remove selected suckers while they are still small and easy to pinch off. This helps the plant send more energy into the main stem and the existing flower clusters instead of constantly building new side growth. When we remove the distractions early, the plant becomes more focused. It grows with purpose, and that is one of the great lessons of pruning. Not every new shoot needs to become a new direction. Sometimes the best harvest comes when we guide energy toward what matters most. 4. The golden ratio of restraint. Never over-prune. Pruning is important, but we have to be careful not to let enthusiasm turn into damage. One of the biggest mistakes new gardeners make is cutting too much at once. The golden rule is this: never remove more than 1/3 of the plant's total foliage at any one time. Those leaves are not just decoration. They are the plant's solar panels. They capture sunlight and turn it into the sugars that feed growth, strengthen the plant, and give tomatoes their rich, sweet flavor. If we strip off too many leaves, the plant can go into shock, slow down, and stop developing properly. There is another problem too. Leaves also protect the fruit. When young tomatoes are suddenly exposed to intense summer sun, they can suffer from sun's scald. The skin turns pale, blistered, and damaged, and that fruit may no longer be good to eat. For gardeners in very hot climates, Missouri pruning can be a useful approach. Instead of removing the entire sucker from the joint, you pinch off only the growing tip and leave 2 small base leaves behind. This keeps the sucker from becoming another large stem, but still leaves enough foliage to shade the fruit and protect it from harsh heat. Good pruning is not about making the plant look perfectly bare and tidy. It is about balance. We prune to create focus, airflow, and better fruiting, but we still leave enough leaf cover to feed the plant and protect the harvest we are trying to grow. 5. The invisible battlefield, tool sanitation. Now let's talk about something many gardeners overlook, even though it can decide the health of the whole tomato patch: clean tools. When we prune, we are making open wounds on the plant. In many ways, we are doing a small kind of surgery. If our shears are dirty or dull, we can spread disease from one plant to another without realizing it. Some of the most serious problems, including tobacco mosaic virus and tomato mosaic virus, can move through mechanical contact. That means they can travel on tools, stakes, hands, gloves, and even clothing. These viruses are especially dangerous because they can survive for a long time outside the plant. Once a tomato plant becomes infected, there is no real cure. The leaves may become mottled, the plant may become stunted, growth weakens, and in many cases, the infected plant must be removed and destroyed to protect the rest of the garden. So before we move from one plant to the next, we need to clean our tools. A 70% isopropyl alcohol wipe works well and can kill many pathogens quickly. A 10% household bleach solution is another common option. Some studies have also shown that a 20% non-fat dry milk solution can help deactivate mosaic viruses, and it is gentler on metal tools than bleach. This small habit only takes a few seconds, but it can save an entire crop. Clean cuts and clean tools show respect for the plant. Our goal is to guide growth and support healing, not carry disease from one stem to the next. 6. Dancing with the weather. The perfect timing pruning tomatoes is not only about where to cut, it is also about when to cut. If you have ever felt tempted to prune right after a summer storm, when the plants are wet and the air is heavy with humidity, that is the moment to stop and wait. Pruning wet tomato plants is one of the easiest ways to spread disease. Moisture helps fungal spores and bacteria move from leaf to leaf and from plant to plant. When you make fresh cuts in wet conditions, those open wounds become easy entry points for disease. In a single afternoon, poor timing can help blight move through a tomato patch much faster than it should. The better approach is to work with the weather, not against it. The best time to prune is on a dry, sunny morning after the dew has evaporated from the leaves. At that point, the plant is dry, the air is moving, and the sun can help the cut surfaces dry and seal more quickly. When pruning cuts dry fast, the plant has a much better chance of protecting itself from infection. That is why timing matters so much. A good gardener learns when to act and when to wait. The garden rewards patience just as much as effort. 7. The magic of multiplication. Propagating endless life. Now let me share one of the most rewarding little secrets in tomato growing. When you walk through your plants and pinch off healthy, strong suckers, do not be too quick to throw them into the compost. Those small pieces you remove can become brand new tomato plants. Tomatoes have an amazing ability to grow roots from their stems. That means a healthy sucker is not just waste. It carries the same genetic life as the mother plant and can turn into a complete new plant if we give it the right conditions. Take a strong sucker, remove the lower leaves, and place the stem in a glass of clean water or directly into a pot of moist soil. Keep it in a bright, protected place while it settles in. Within about 5 to 7 days, you will usually begin to see small white roots forming along the stem. In less than 2 weeks, the piece you are about to discard can become a young tomato plant ready for planting. This is one of the easiest ways to multiply your garden for free. You can extend your tomato harvest later into the season, fill empty spaces in the garden, or share young plants with a neighbor, a friend, or a child who is just beginning to learn the joy of growing food. It is a beautiful reminder from the garden that nothing is truly wasted. Even the parts we cut away can still carry life, take root somewhere new, and grow into something useful, generous, and full of promise. 8. The final cut. Embracing the end of seasons as summer begins to fade, the days grow shorter, the air turns cooler, and the first frost starts to approach, there is one final pruning step that can make a big difference. This step is called topping the plant. An indeterminate tomato does not naturally understand that the season is almost over. It will keep pushing out new growth, new yellow flowers, and tiny green tomatoes at the top of the vine as long as it can. But as gardeners, we know those late flowers and tiny fruits usually will not have enough time to mature. Most tomatoes need about 30 to 45 days to develop and ripen before frost arrives. If the plant keeps spending energy on new growth that cannot finish in time, that energy is taken away from the larger green tomatoes already hanging on the lower vines. Those fruits still have a real chance to ripen, but only if the plant is encouraged to focus on them. So about 30 days before your expected first frost, we make a firm but helpful cut. With clean, sterilized shears, we remove the growing tip at the top of the main stems and take away those late flowers that no longer have time to become a harvest. In a way, we are telling the plant, the season of growing upward is ending. Now it is time to finish what has already begun. After topping, the plant redirects more of its energy into the existing fruit. Sugars and resources move toward the tomatoes that are already developed. Those hard green fruits can begin to blush, soften, and turn red before the cold destroys them. In many gardens, this final cut can help ripen many extra tomatoes that would otherwise be lost to frost. It is one of the clearest lessons the garden teaches us. Every season has an ending. There comes a time to stop chasing more new beginnings and focus our care on bringing what we have already started to full, beautiful completion. Conclusion, my dear friends. Pruning tomatoes is much more than a simple garden chore. It is a living conversation with the plant. We learn to understand its growth habit, guide its energy, protect it from disease, and help it produce healthier, better fruit. We learn why genetics matter, why airflow and clean tools matter, and why timing can protect a crop. We learn that even a removed sucker can become new life. And in the end, we learn the courage to cut away what is unnecessary so the plant can focus on what truly feeds the harvest. When you walk into your garden tomorrow with your shears in hand, I hope you look at your tomato plants with more confidence and more respect. Do not be afraid to make the right cut. Sometimes a plant must lose a little foliage to give its strongest, sweetest crop. If this journey through the tomato patch has been helpful to you, leave a comment below and tell me what tomato variety your family loves most. And I would love to know this too. What lesson has your garden taught you this year? I read every single comment. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and share this with another garden lover who wants healthier plants and a better harvest. Until next time, keep your hands in the soil, your heart open, and your tools clean. This is Earthly Delights. Happy gardening.